the middle of the 14th century, Europe did not fall to an army. There were no battlefields, no invading legions, no warning signs on the horizon. What arrived could not be seen. It moved silently through ports, cities, and homes, reshaping an entire continent in a matter of years. In the next 10 minutes, drawing from historical records, archaeology, and contemporary accounts, and using artificial intelligence trained on historical evidence, we will reconstruct this catastrophe through images and scenes you have never witnessed before. Not as legend, not as exaggeration, but as history, recreated to show how nearly half of Europe disappeared, and why the world that followed was never the same again. The Black Death was more than a disease. It was the collapse of certainty itself. It disrupted how people lived and worked. It reshaped belief, authority, and trust. And it forced an entire continent to reconsider how fragile life truly was. In the early 14th century, Europe was crowded, connected, and dangerously unprepared. Trade routes linked Asia, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean into a single commercial network. Cities expanded rapidly. Ports were busy with ships carrying grain, silk, spices, and people. Movement meant opportunity. Connection meant prosperity. But beneath that growth lay weakness. Sanitation was poor. Waste flowed through streets and waterways. Medical knowledge was limited to tradition, superstition, and guesswork. No one understood bacteria, infection, or transmission. Europe believed its greatest threats would arrive with armies, with swords, banners, and siege engines. It did not imagine danger traveling quietly, hidden among cargo, rats, and fleas, aboard ships welcomed for their wealth. The systems that fueled Europe's success also created perfect conditions for disaster. When the disease arrived, it followed the same routes as trade, and the connections that once brought prosperity would soon deliver something far more devastating. That misunderstanding would prove fatal. In 1347, ships began arriving at European ports carrying more than trade goods. When they docked, something was already wrong. Sailors were visibly ill. Some collapsed as they came ashore. Others were found dead in their cabins before the cargo was even unloaded. What followed moved with terrifying speed. Within days, the disease spread through crowded port cities. Within weeks, it traveled inland, following the same routes that once carried wealth and opportunity, along roads used by merchants, along rivers linking markets and towns, along trade networks that connected Europe more tightly than ever before. The symptoms were unlike anything people had seen. High fever, painful swelling, skin darkening as the body failed from within. Doctors were powerless. They argued, prayed, and experimented, but nothing worked. Medical knowledge offered no explanation and no cure. Cities reacted too slowly. Gates were closed only after the disease was already inside. Quarantines were attempted after it was too late to contain them. The plague did not spread by chance. It followed connection. The more active a city was, the more traders it welcomed, the more routes it controlled, the faster it collapsed. Europe's greatest strength, its growing interconnected world, had become the plague's most efficient weapon. As the plague tightened its grip, normal life across Europe began to collapse. Entire families vanished within days. Houses were sealed, then abandoned. Streets that once echoed with trade and conversation fell silent. Markets closed. Workshops stood empty. Food rotted where it could not be harvested or sold. Churches became places of desperation. They filled with the sick and the frightened, and then emptied again, as priests died alongside their congregations. Faith did not disappear, but certainty did. Governments struggled to function. Officials fled or fell ill. Orders were issued, but few remained to enforce them. Laws still existed on paper, but authority dissolved in practice. Fear replaced order. Some people fled the cities, hoping distance would save them. Instead, they carried the disease with them, spreading it to villages and countryside. Others stayed behind, trapped inside homes with the sick, waiting without medicine, explanation, or help. Time lost meaning. Days blurred together, measured not by work or prayer, but by death. Europe was not experiencing a single crisis. It was experiencing absence. An absence of labor, as fields went unworked. An absence of authority, as institutions collapsed. An absence of trust, as neighbors feared one another. Society did not fall in a dramatic moment. It thinned. It hollowed out. What remained was a continent still standing, but stripped of the structures that made life feel stable, predictable, and shared. The plague did not simply kill people. It removed the connections that held Europe together. When the plague finally slowed, Europe emerged into a different world. The loss was staggering. Millions were dead. Entire communities had vanished. The scale of absence could not be undone. Yet among those who survived, something unexpected began to appear. Opportunity. With so many workers gone, labor became scarce. Fields needed hands. Workshops needed skill. Cities needed people simply to function. For the first time in generations, ordinary workers gained leverage. Wages rose. Mobility increased. Those who had once been tied to land or lord found options where none had existed before. Old social hierarchies began to weaken. Feudal obligations were questioned. Peasants demanded better terms, higher pay, and greater freedom. In many regions, resistance was no longer unthinkable. Cities adapted quickly. Guilds reorganized. New laws were introduced to manage labor and wages. Power shifted quietly, not through revolution, but through necessity. The Black Death did not destroy Europe. It disrupted it so deeply that return was impossible. Economic structures changed. Social relationships adjusted. The balance between labor and authority tilted. What followed was not immediate progress, but long-term transformation. The plague forced Europe to confront scarcity, value, and human worth in new ways. Survival reshaped priorities. Loss reshaped expectations. Out of devastation came a slow reordering of society, not because people planned it, but because the old system could no longer function as it once had. The Black Death did not end medieval Europe in a single moment, but it altered its direction permanently. The Black Death altered belief itself. People began to question authority in ways that had once seemed unthinkable. Religious leaders had offered answers that failed. Political systems had promised protection they could not deliver. Faith did not disappear, but certainty did. People questioned fate. They questioned whether suffering followed divine order or simple chance. They questioned the idea that the world was fixed, permanent, and unchangeable. Art reflected this shift. Death became unavoidable as a subject. Skulls, decay, and mortality filled paintings, carvings, and manuscripts. At the same time, individuality emerged more clearly. Human emotion, personal struggle, and inner life gained new attention. The medieval worldview began to loosen its grip. The rigid hierarchies that had defined society for centuries no longer felt inevitable. Tradition lost some of its authority. Experience gained weight. Quietly, without declaration or design, the foundations of the modern age began to form. Not through invention or discovery alone, but through loss. The plague did not introduce new ideas. It stripped away old assumptions. What emerged was a world more uncertain, but also more flexible. A world where people no longer assumed that order was guaranteed, or that authority was beyond question. Europe did not step willingly into a new era. It was pushed there by catastrophe. And once belief itself had changed, history could not return to what it had been. The Black Death was not a single moment in history. It was a pause. A point at which Europe stopped moving forward, held its breath, and then restarted in a different direction. Empires did not vanish overnight. Cities were rebuilt, fields were replanted. Life, eventually, continued. But what returned was not the world that had disappeared. Old assumptions no longer held. Certainty had been broken. Authority felt fragile. Permanence no longer seemed guaranteed. People remembered what it felt like for order to collapse without warning. They remembered how quickly familiar systems could fail. And that memory stayed. Sometimes history is shaped by conquest, by armies and ambition. Sometimes it is shaped by collapse, by systems breaking under their own weight. And sometimes history is transformed by something unseen. Something that arrives quietly, moves faster than understanding, and leaves behind consequences far larger than its cause. The Black Death did not announce a new age. It forced one into existence. Europe did not choose to change. It adapted because it had no other option. And from that adaptation, a different world slowly emerged. One more aware of fragility, and forever marked by the moment. When nearly half a continent vanished, and history was compelled to move on.